Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to RaceFace.Pro, welcome to Spa-Francorchamps, and welcome to round 5 of the LMU Championship, powered by EG Evolve. My name's Stephen Koenig, joining me in the commentary box, the one, the only, and some say he wants to be the Rainmeister, Cameron de Bastos. Cameron, welcome to the commentary box. Thanks for putting down the helmets and coming and having a chat to us this evening.
Yeah, good evening, Stephen, and good evening, everybody out there in the virtual grandstand. Yes, Spa with the wet, a nightmare for many drivers, especially if you don't really like wet weather racing. It is quite a tricky one, and not very fond memories between myself and the circuit, especially when it's wet. But during the dry, it's an absolutely lovely circuit drive, a combination of high-speed cornering as long as very slow corners, plus a few straights, where the driver spends a lot more time with the throttle flat out instead of on the brake. So during endurance race, the drivers are definitely going to want to be straight to right foot, but in a short 1 hour and 20-minute dash, drivers will mostly be focusing on trying to get optimal line through the corners during these wet weather conditions, than worrying about the cramps that are going to be experiencing in the foot. But Stephen, as I take a look at during the qualifying session, we already see the likes of Peters being slipstreamed by one of the RTA Lamborghinis. I believe that will be the likes of Kruger. Kruger, of course, trying to get a better run, but as I said, that Peters unfortunately going and spinning around. Not the momentum he wants to carry through the entire race, but it's going to be interesting. I don't know, what's your take on this?
I think this is going to set the pace for what the drivers are wanting to do. Qualifying, it's all about really putting in those great times, but added with wet weather on a 7-kilometer circuit with change of camber and undulations around this circuit, 20 corners to negotiate, plus drivers fighting it out. Remember, this is the first time they've actually gone in a full wet weather run here at Spa-Francorchamps in all the seasons of LMU right here on RaceFace.Pro. That is another factor for the drivers to consider while they're trying to ensure for the quicker times. Plus, it's round 5 of the championship, and that means the championship points are getting rather tight. Leading out the championship at the moment is Jan Bluchnout on 121 points. Martin Jacobs, his teammate, is sitting in second on 120 points. Gerrit Bucas sits on 103 points in third. Brandon Kruger on 72 points, along with Sean Straden on 53 points. Esteban Pretorius on 52 points. Chris Collison sitting with 48. Ron Kleinon sitting on 42. Paul Fenter on 33 points. And rounding out the top 10 is Herman Percival on 31 points. So the drivers are very, very close in the championship, meaning a great run here in qualifying means that you're starting up in the field and out of that spray, and it means you're leaving your competitors in that spray. But with that being said, and that's welcome to everyone that's joining us here out in the virtual grandstands. We've got the Griffin Sim Racing team showing some support, looking to have a bit of fun here tonight. But Cam, I think Spa-Francorchamps is one of the circuits that if you can't get it right in the dry, you're going to absolutely feel it in the wet. This is a circuit that will punish you through most of the corners in the dry. I mean, take Blanchemont. It's a very fine line before you get it right or meeting the wall on both sides of the circuit. Or Pouhon, running out too far wide in the dry can cost you time. Now add a little bit of wet weather patches where you have to feather the throttle. I do expect drivers are going to start picking up those incident limits on what they can do. Penalties will come into play. But those that have flirted with the track limits and get away with it will be standing at the top.
No, absolutely, Stephen. And a quick little note there, we did mention Martin Jacobs earlier on. Martin not able to race tonight. His car at the circuit, but unfortunately not out on circuit, just in the pits there with the team frantically trying to get the car working, but unfortunately doesn't seem to be going out there. But you mentioned it, a very, very tricky circuit. A Spa normally run around 2 minutes 17s if you are able to hook up the car correctly. Throw in wet weather racing and you slow down quite significantly with times around 2:20s, maybe even the 2:36s, depending on what the weather or the track condition is. Spa is very well known in terms of it's loud, it's uphill, it's in the mountains. One side of the circuit might be dry, the other side of the circuit might be wet. Going into Puan, as you mentioned, is also going into the run-up to Radion, so a Rouge corner. So, funny enough, a Rouge, it's two sections. Top is Radion, bottom is a Rouge. If you do not hook it up correctly, you will land into a puddle with the massive dip being formed there, as it's underneath the track there is a river flowing. So puddles will form there, and drivers will need to be cautious, especially on the inside line of the uphill part. It gets very, very slippery there, as we see the likes of the RTA Lamborghini going through Rouge and up into Radion. But Puan is also another one. Normally you go there, you go through a corner, give a quick dab on the brakes, or even just a quick shift down from 5th into 4th, and then the car coasting and immediately getting back on it. In the wet, you do have to be mindful. You need to brake much more earlier, and you actually have to use the brakes. And then sometimes, if the car isn't that happy, you have to shift down from 5th all the way down into 3rd, and maybe even from 4th to 3rd, depending on what speed you carry coming through Speaker / No Name Corner, or even now Jackie X Corner. That corner has 3 names. We do not know what it's called. We know it as Speaker or No Name Corner. And then, of course, Blanchimont. Stephen, you did mention Blanchimont in the dry, very, very tricky with the car fighting on the very, very edge of grip. You can't just run out the corner as you usually would. If you put all 4 tires off, you will get a track limit, but it also has the ability to just make your rear end of the car snap out. You do have to be mindful of that in the dry. In the wet, it is a tango to keep that car on the wall. A tango between racing, continuing racing, or meeting the barrier full on and completely wrecking your car as well as your race. And maybe even your championship hopes. You hope tonight will be playing in your favor, but it's a very, very tricky circuit here. Spa, it's a special place for many, many drivers. It is quite known as the home of secondary home of endurance racing, next to the circuit de la South in Le Mans, with its 24 hours race happening here. But drivers need to be very mindful. It's a long race, very tricky circuit. Be mindful, especially these conditions going out.
Well, talking about that, the championship is going to be a bit of an interesting one to play for, because as we take a look, Bliffnote is sitting in 4th place at the moment. He is setting an absolute monumental run through the corners. This is going to put him up into 1st place, ahead of his teammate Brandon Kruger. But with the dropout from Martin Jacobs, that means that there's a little bit of breathing room for Bliffnote. But take a look who's sitting still in the wings here. The Stingers Racing jumping in with Kurt Bucas, who still wants to hold on to that championship fight. Brandon Kruger has an opportunity to move into the championship fight as well. So Blicknote has got a lot to go on and really move forward. But I also want to touch on Chris Collison at the moment, who so far every single race that he has been in with his teammate, Kurt Bucas, he has successfully finished behind him and even qualified behind Gerrit. Now sitting in 3rd place and going to be lining up next to his teammate. For the first time, we're going to have both of the Stingers Racing locking down the 2nd row and both RTA drivers locking down the 1st row. It's a teammate battle at the front, and at the moment Chris Collison seems to have the upper hand over his teammate. Is this going to then work out in his favor to move the grid forward and also to bring his points up? However, that will take away points from Gerrit Bucas, who's fighting for 3rd place in the championship. There's so many dynamics coming into it. Another driver that I'm quite impressed with, Kirsten Peters, coming out into the top 5, getting to grips with the weather a lot better than the dry. We're seeing new names up at the front with wet weather versus what we've seen in dry, and that is a bit of a telling factor. But I also want to point out the track is starting to dry out a little bit as well. So it's on a greasy patch, and by the time we go green flag racing, drivers will be on the dry. The question is the weather going to turn and come back? Because as we know with the pit stops, it's crucial to go and get your tires on correctly, get the right tires on. Otherwise, one wrong call will throw you down. We take a look at Paul Ricard as a very good one, as it was round 2 and it landed up with drivers thrown down the grid by just having wets on during the dry or dry tires during the wet. Herman Percival up into third place with his McLaren, looking to stay in for the fight. Remember, Herman was off to a little bit of a rocky start for his championship hopes. He's in 10th behind Paul Fenter. He's on 31 points, 2 points off the back of Paul Fenter. Ron Kleinans in the Lexus sits 8th in the championship, and he's going to be trying to also close up that distance as well. So we've got a number of drivers that are trying to move the meter a little bit. They're trying to move forward, but if the weather turns, we're going to see an entirely different set of drivers at the sharp end of the field versus what we've seen in the dry. And that makes me want to lean to, come on, let it rain. Let the clouds come and catch everyone off guard.
Well, I do believe it was a certain F1 driver, Mr. Ayrton Senna, that said, I do stand on correction, that says, rain is the greatest equalizer. Is it Mr. Walker? I'm not 100% sure, but it did say rain is the greatest equalizer.
Walker was
There's Mr. Walker saying rain is the greatest equalizer when it comes to drivers. It removes fast setups. It's all about driver keeping pace. We see it many times. However, Steve, I do want to point out something. I saw movement within the garage of a certain Mr. Martin Jacobs. He is seeming to get the car ready and might be even starting from the back of the pack if he is not able to get a lap in. The car is out on the, I believe, apron, unless our timing tower is wrong. They're not currently in its pit box, but going out and maybe setting a time if he has enough time to go out there. Otherwise, he will be starting at the back of the pack. I don't know what day he is out on circuit. So Martin hoping to get a lap in before the end of qualifying. It might be close. This is something to know. Don't know what was wrong with the car. Maybe the car struggled to fire up. We do not know. However, he is going out on circuit, but I don't think he will be able to get a lap in as we enter the final 2 minutes of a qualifying session. And we do know that it takes at least a 2 minute, well, 2 minutes 50, 2 minutes 40 to get around the circuit. With a qualifying time to be a 2 minute 34. Depending on how hard he's pushing this car, I don't think he'll get a qualifying lap in, as this is his out lap. So if he makes it with maybe 1 or 2 seconds on the clock, he might be lucky, but I don't think so. But take a look at this. Herman Percival getting disqualified from qualifying. What has happened there?
Did he go and
He's
fly?
just got...
Did he fly into the pits?
It would disqualify one from... Oh, I'm curious about that. Unfortunately, not the era.
In qualifying in LMU. I'm so curious to find that out.
This is something new. However, I will say this, Steve. If it does dry out, a car to keep an eye on will be that McLaren. McLaren is quite known to be a powerful car around Spa due to just how the car is designed. It's low drag and just low to the ground. But if the car gets bottomed out through a rouge, you have to be careful. But I'm very shocked what's going on with that car. Why did he go and get disqualified into pits? But
so
all eyes focus now on amidst the Martin Jacobs. But over to you, Steve. You have some information.
So these looking at the rules of what can cause it is insufficient fuel, which we do know the drivers run low fuel, track limits being exceeded quite a bit, technical infringements if the car's done a little bit of a funny, driving erratically or the using a bit of glitches, but I don't think that's the case. The other one is wrong way or reversing on circuit. So
wonder...
if you engage reverse, there's a possibility of going a little too far and getting caught up. If you've gone and run the rouge a little too hard once, twice, 3 times more, then engaged reverse for whatever reason, that will go and put it. The question comes down, is he's DQ'd out of qualifying? Does that mean he's disqualified out of the race? Has the sim...
This is new territory.
Has the sim disqualified him with a 2 minute 35.3 due to the infringement that the sim has decided it doesn't like, which, well, after putting himself into the top 5 would be a mighty blow. However, with Martin Jacobs able to get a time in, if he can put it all together and scratch a time to get into the top 5, it means that our championship battle becomes a little bit more interesting, because Jan Bluknight currently leads out with Brandon Kruger, Chris Colson, and Karabukas. That means it's a lockout, RTA in front, Stingers in the second row. It will be up to Martin to get into that top 5. He will have to try and push Arno Kraus out of the position, and Arno Kraus did a 2-minute 36.3, remember, on warmer sets of tires, going and moving forward and doing what he can. So I do think this is going to be a very, very interesting play. If he can make his way to the top here, this is going to be a championship fight coming into play. The question that comes in, and I know there's always the rule of gloves off, everyone's racing, but been involved in a racing team, been around for it, it's now the main thing of, guys, think about what you need to do. Get the cars to the line, and you can scrap it out, but don't go mental on one another, because that will end up in a championship swaying in the favor of Karabukas. Brandon Kruger up into first place. He manages just to pip his teammate, doing a 2:33.3 versus Jan Bluknout, and Bluknout fires back with a 2-minute 32.5, just to say, listen, I've done it, I'm here. Jan VDV, good to see him coming back and moving his way through, and that's great to see. But Cam, you've got a couple of details on what exactly happened to Herman Percival during qualifying.
Quick 2 seconds, Stephen. Take a look at the top of that timing tower. A certain Mr. Martin Jacobs, on one single flying lap, has clinched pole position. But okay, we'll get back to that now. Quick information that I got from, if cameras are on, I think the expression from would be shocking for everyone around from what we're seeing here. But quick information from the pit wall of Mr. Herman Percival. Fortunately, in pit lane, got clipped by another car and got spun around, and unfortunately, stewards deemed that as speeding, which gave him a drive-through in pit lane. So unfortunately, what happened was drive-through came in, and the stewards weren't quite happy and decided, you know what, you didn't serve it to our specifications. Enjoy having to be disqualified. So all that hard work for Herman Percival going and being chucked out the window and not what he wanted to do. So he's going to have to fight it back. But take a look at outside our commentary box window, Stephen. It is all sunny and very
pull my specs out even to make sure the time was correct. That's for certain.
Yeah, Stephen wearing glasses. Interesting sight to see, ladies and gentlemen. Not something you see normally here. But yes, what a flying lap that was from Jacobs. How did he manage to get that up and running? That is absolutely shocking.
I don't even know. I'm even changing my spectacles to make sure that it's correct. You have no idea. Yep, it changes spectacles. It ends the same way. Wow, great
blistering
time.
Pace there. Yeah, absolutely blistering pace. But drivers getting ready and onto the grid here.
And we're gonna be.
It's now.
Well, let's take a look at what the starting order is, folks, because it is round 5 of the championships. Martin Jacobs out in first place with Jan Bluknout in second. And he is going to be chased down by Brandon Kruger, Chris Carlson, Karabukas, Ruan Kleinans, Arno Kraus, Christian Peters, Neil Greening, Stanton Augustus, Paul Fenter, Kubi Turon, Johan van der Venter going and running in 13th position. I always got to remember calling him van der Venter and not VDV, but we all know him as VDV. Jan Gamal going to be running in 14th with Rob van der Heever in 15th. And got Devanel, Lucas Joubert, and Herman Percival will be starting a little bit further back with Brandon Holthazen as well. But as our drivers make their way to the line, all eyes to the front, Cameron, as round 5 is about to start. We're about to go racing, and drivers are at the ready to battle it out. It is RTA at the front, pushing it through, and now it is a down to the wire as they head toward Les Coombs. This is going to get a little bit wild. Jacobs defends the line, but it's going to be Bluknout around the nose, trying to do everything he can, door to door with as they go. Brandon Kruger going to rather wait it out. And you got Karabukas, Ruan Kleinans, Chris Collison. They are going to follow through. Kleinans with that Lexus, absolutely rapid, waiting to try for his opportunity. Kirsten Peters gets on the back of Chris Collison with Honor Kraus. Says we do have a problem. That is an RTA BMW in the wall. That is only one RTA BMW that we know. That is Blucknote out of the race. And I do think it was contact with his own teammate that has now binned him into the wall.
Question is, were they side by side going through a Rouge there? And we did speak about it. You don't want to go through a Rouge side by side, but that is a rear wing off of that BMW, and that is gone. That is done. That is dusted. Now that frees up Brandon Kruger to take after his teammate Martin Jacobs, but
you know what that's done? You know what's that done? That
threw
is
the entire championship on his head.
Changed the championship completely, because a DNF 0 points, zero. Nothing, nada, gone, goodbye. And guess what? That top 3 that you're aiming for, gone. And why? Because the door-to-door. Remember I said, if you're going to have a chat to your team, you've got to go and alert them. Guys, think about the long game here. Think about keeping it together. And unfortunately, what's happened is there was an unsettled situation. Whether there was contact or wasn't, I can't see damage on Martin's car, but I do suspect that there was a bit of close running there. Both drivers pushed a bit too hard, cold tires, and unfortunately, one ended up looking a little less sharper than the other. Arno Kraus from Team Triad Racing fights it out against Paul Fenter from Logistical Nightmare Racing. I do want to point out Paul Fenter in April is turning 400 years old. I just want to point that out as he goes late on the brakes around Arno Kraus. Arno Kraus going and squeezing him at the moment. Fenter was able to get it done and dusted through bus stop, but needs to carry the drive now against the Chevrolet behind him. Stanton Augustus keeps in tow, but Chris Collison is going to be more than happy with these two fighting it out.
And absolutely, Stephen. And take a quick look there down the order there. I was going to take a look. Mr. Herman Percival shot up through the timing tower and has gone now for a drive through. I wonder, did he jump his start? Perhaps, we do not know. Did he go and take avoiding action and unfortunately having to go and now serve it? It's
a penalty. It's a drive-through penalty for being out of position. A big problem for Jan Gamal. Jan Gamal in front of Kobe Turan was not into the wall. He saved it. Oh my. We nearly had a second BMW absolutely planted. But for the likes of Kirby, that was a big heart and mouth moment. Just seeing a car completely sideways by his nose and twisting it around. Neil Greening fighting out against Stanton Augustus behind them. Rob van Hever from the Griffin Sim Racing team going and fighting it out. So I've got to put in a little bit to the Griffin Sim Racing team here. The liveries that they're doing for each of the different cars across the Sims, LMU, ACC, would like to see if maybe one or two are going to jump into iRacing, because then they've got the whole spectrum covered at this point. But they've really been improving their liveries. And out of all of them, I'd have to go and say the blue and white. And yes, I'm favoriting the BMW colours, but that by far works better than the gold and black. But you can see the subtle details of what they've done in designing the liveries. So, good to see a couple of drivers out there having a bit of fun, but we have got some shocking developments coming through. Devanel up on the inside gets the pass on Lucas Joubert in the McLaren. Lucas Joubert in the Mercedes has got Devanel ahead of him, and Kirby that got that pass on the inside. But Devanel has been out of driving for quite some time for the season, if I remember correctly. He has only raced once in round one. This will be his first race back, and it's in round 5 for Devanel and that McLaren. So he is absolutely fresh, but is still trying to figure out what has gone on. to move forward in this championship. Just by finishing, that's going to be him done and sorted. But Cam, developments within the first not even 10 minutes of this race, that is championship changing.
No, absolutely, Stephen. And I spy with my little beady brown eyes someone in the virtual grandstand that might be able to give us a little bit of information about what happened in that first lap contact at a route, and that is a certain Mr. David van Wyk. Now, David, if you can slide us a bit of information about what has happened there, that would absolutely make it so much easier for us to understand the team dynamics that's currently going through there, because I would not want to be in the back of that garage or in that trailer, the driver's trailer, where when this race ends, because I'm pretty sure some heated words will be exchanged if they're not already exchanged, because sometimes drivers have the ability to talk to one another when they are racing. So I'm curious. So David, just let me know. We would like to have some hot gossip as we sit here on air watching this race here. But you spoke about Paul Fainter turning 400 and something there. You know, for an old chap, he can still race. He might have collected a few walls every now and then, but he's still a good driver there. But another driver I also want to focus on, Steve, is Mr. Chris Collison. Fantastic qualifying pace, but it's just not, the car doesn't seem to be squared up quite well as his teammate when it comes to race pace.
I have to agree with that one. Race pace seems to be the drop-off point for him, and I don't know if it's a difference in the car being a little bit heavier, that he's not so happy with it. And I mean, this is going to be a interesting run. But Chris Colson's got a lot of work to catch up to his teammates, as he's got to get past Peters, Fenter and Kleinans further up the road. He's pulling Arno Kraus and Neil Greening along for a bit of company as well. They're not going to be holding back. Two other drivers that we don't get to talk a lot about is, take a look at this, Brandon Holthuizen trying to get a little bit of a cutback on Kirby Turon. These two are having an absolute slugfest. Brandon Holthuizen coming over from the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione, and if I remember correctly, Project Cars was his original league racing in Logistical Nightmare Racing before moving over to Assetto Corsa Competizione. Kirby has been on the climb despite everything. This Porsche has had a little bit of a yo-yo effect, but Kirby has got his teeth out this race and is making sure it works in his favor. So it's good to see drivers trying something new, trying to move forward. But I wonder if we're starting to see who's got cars set up for dry weather and who's got cars set up for wet weather. And that is where the different factors come in. As at the moment, Brandon Kruger and Martin Jacobs continue to fight on with one another and see how they go a little bit forward in this race. They have to work with one another. And I'm sure there was a call on the radio of, come on guys, we need to try keep this going. We need to break away from the field, then we can focus. As Bucas is just hanging on to the coattails, making sure he can get that little bit closer.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an attack there, but we did speak about drivers. Which car is set up the best? Which is one for the dry? Herman Percival. Yes. Oh, runs a bit wide, kicks up a bit of rubble there. Well, that's there is Martin Jacobs. But Herman Percival, yes, I'm going to speak about one of the McLarens. And yes, I am a McLaren lover. You can, I will do whatever I can. You can put me in an Aston, you can put me in a BMW, you can put me in whatever car. I am not able to get past driving with the McLaren. It just suits me well. However, Herman Percival started dead last, had a drive-through on the start, and take a look at this. Already right on the rear wing of two drivers. That is Lucas Joubert as well as Nal there. So Devenel, which is another McLaren driver, but first time racing, I could say, pretty much. We've seen him racing yet, but Herman is able to just looks to have the car a bit more suited up in terms of this. I see around the outside, going through Blanchemont, puts off Lucas Joubert on the line, makes it much easier for him, but he does have a bit of a tighter run, goes forward, almost tries to stick his nose in, pushes out now, side by side into the braking for bus stop, which is technically not a real bus stop anymore, but it's a bus stop because of the old circuit layouts. Side by side, who's the bravest on the brakes? Around the outside, goes in and takes two positions in a span of 3 corners. Contact though between Joubert and Devenel, not what the newcomer would have wanted. No, be careful about driving backwards there now. You don't want to get disqualified. Now Lucas going from ACC. Bit of a long run going there for now, as that McLaren does not look very happy. I've never seen McLaren crunch that way in any shape or form there, but now having to go on and just drive there. But some great racing, but hard in mouth moments there. But Gerard Beekes now setting his sights on the Lexus. Lexus having being very strong.
Hang on, we mentioned Gerard Beekes was in third. Take a look what's sitting ahead of him now. Ron Kleinans in the Lexus has managed to close up a 2.5 second deficit to the likes of Beekes, managed to get the pass, and is now extending that gap to 1.3 seconds. Kleinans is just accelerating his way through here and is having no problem of going and opening up the difference, but he's also managing to bite into the gap of Brandon Kruger and Martin Jacobs. He is on an absolute charge and is just having an easier time to pull everyone in. Well, I got a funny idea that there's drivers thinking about how long they can coast and keep it going. Kleinans is running keep your foot flat, whatever happens, happens, to try and close up the distance. And it's working in his favour. Collison and Rob van der Heever, Rob going on the dirt, really slides his way through. The BMW is not really known for more modern day rallying, but when you go back to the 2002 days, it was absolutely incredible. But not what you want to see an M4 doing, riding over the curbs and having a good one out there. Jan Gamal managed to get himself back out on circuit after having a very, very lengthy pit stop. He is now keeping with the likes of Lucas Chavez. I do think there was a bit of damage that we missed when he lost it at the top of Eau Rouge, as you called it, that he was getting some work done to it, and now is just keeping out of the way.
Minding out of the
trouble.
way.
Gotta say, that's one way to do it, to open up the gap.
Yeah, I've got a bit of information regarding that lap 1 incident between RTA teammates Martin Jacobs and Johan Blichnet. And apparently it sounds like rear suspension failure, some earlier contact maybe at the source, and unfortunately the car just had a bit of a snap there. So it's what we're receiving from the team. Sometimes teams might like to just play a bit close to their chest and not showcase any inter-team teammate rivalry there. I mean, we have all seen what happened with McLaren last year, but it's unfortunately one of those things. It's championship gone. I would say Blichnet get the car fixed and get it out again, but unfortunately garage still being closed, the red marker of doom going through. Well, they're not completely closed. You never know. The team might try to get the car out there.
I've got a funny feeling that car is needing a new chassis.
It's toasted.
Yeah,
and Steve, sorry to interrupt you. Johan Gamal out of the race. DNF. That car pulled into the pits, garage door closed down. Get my red marker of doom through that entry and say that is an official confirmed DNF for that driver. So unfortunately, that's after getting the car out, car not performing as it should, and saying that is it. Unfortunately, not being able to continue with that race. But yeah, that's championship though. That has opened up the door for anybody else there. So Kirby-Chan in the Iron Lynx livery, setting after the likes of Stanton Augustus, newcomer, well, semi-newcomer one can say, for our Stingers racing team. And still love that car. That Lamborghini color scheme is absolutely pretty as anything. But yeah, that is not one to do. You see drivers struggling to find a bit of pace. But Herman Percival, I'm sorry, flying up the ranks, already four positions up from where he started. However, he is just, remember, he had a 10-second gap after his drive-through. And he clawed that back, plus some extra change. So I wonder if he's running a very good setup in terms of dry weather racing. Now, I know many drivers are saying, Stephen, I want to hear your opinion on it. It says many teams saying that some of the cars are absolutely just slow at the moment and not being able to really make it out. But I think, regardless of what the pace of a car is, it's not the car, it's what the driver can extract out of it. I mean, we've seen drivers perform phenomenally in cars that are said to be absolutely bonked out of existence.
The thing is, with BOP, it is a balancing act, but it isn't the defining factor. As we've seen drivers overcome BOP, you've pointed it out previously. I mean, let's take a look. Lamborghini, meant to be the fastest thing out there? Well, Kirby in the Porsche, tailing on the back, and right behind him, Brandon Holthaus. And these are drivers that are comfortable with their cars, and they're driving within their limits. When the moment you start worrying about BOP is when you're on the really upper echelons of driver skill. You really at that top that can't be beat sort of driver. The aliens tend to worry about the Max Verstappens, you look at the McLaren teams, the true top esport teams, that BOP then is more of a factor. For your hobbyist drivers, which we mostly are here, you tend to have that not affecting as much. And it's about comfortability in the car. Also, BOP means that you're faster in a lap. It doesn't necessarily mean that your consistency is going to play to it. It also means BOP is in perfect condition, it's going to work. But the moment you start to cool things down, turbochargers work. The moment it starts to heat up, turbochargers tend to suffer. And that's when naturally aspirated engines come into play. And aerodynamics come in as a factor. We've done lots and lots of evolution in sim racing, but I do feel for majority of the grid and majority of the drivers, BOP doesn't have as much of an effect as we tend to think, but it's a mental shift to that. And that's why
also,
I feel that it's kind of an odd one to play.
It also comes down to the point, I believe, Stephen, of sticking with one car throughout a longevity of a season or even years or whatever, in order to really maximize and understand within the inner workings of the car that yes, you get the BOP, yes, it does affect you, but you can make changes within that car to use it to your advantage at work patterns of performance, whether faster in a straight line, more downforce, a bit more mechanical grip in corners in order to counteract that BOP. I mean, we've seen drivers do it in multiple situations. As we see Yuan VDV dropping down 2 positions there on the timing tower. I might have had a bit of a spin there, but we've seen it before with drivers that had a phenomenal amount of ballast being added to the car, one can say, and absolutely going and smashing the field no matter what happens. So I think, yes, BOP have an effect. However, it's also about knowledge within the car that can go and overcome that sort of effect. But as we say that, Kirby Tron looking down the inside, going to Lacombe, side by side with Stanton Augustus, who's the bravest on the brakes. The Porsche making the moves, working their way, making their magic known as they sneak past the Lamborghini of Stanton Augustus. Now Stanton Augustus shifting his focus from trying to defend against Kirby Tron to having to defend against the logistical nightmare team of Brandon Holthaus, and that BMW also firing on all cylinders and hoping to make some moves regarding his position up the field, hoping to get closer to that top 10 and just hoping to get to that 12th position. But they have to be careful because only a few seconds back is the McLaren of Percival already making his moves up the field as he hopes to get into that top 10 after showing phenomenal pace, making in the earlier stages of qualifying, unfortunately getting disqualified in qualifying and now having to go. But Arno Kraus, the lone American muscle car out there, as you see gravel kicked up from the car in front of him. Arno not having great races the previous time around at Spa, oh, not at Spa, at Le Mans, as well as at what's the other French circuit? Round 2, I can't remember. The Paul Ricard. The Paul Ricard. I don't care about that other French circuit. However, that's just my opinion. But on the Kraus not having the best performance at those 2 circuits, and now as also at Qatar, now seeing himself in 7th, hunting down the likes of Neil Greening, but also having to defend against Neil Greening, but now also setting his sights after the likes of Kirsten Peters. I wonder if he figured out what ticks within the C8R, well, not even C8R, sorry, this is the Z, whatever now it's called, but for me it's a Z8R car because the Z8R, well, this chassis was originally designed to be the Z8R GTE car before that regulation got chucked out the window. However, Arno Kraus able to make the car work for him at Spa, but will he be able to hunt down the likes of Peters and also defend against the likes of Neil Greening? That is the question that's hanging in the air, Stephen.
There's lots and lots of factors at the moment for the drivers, but there's still plenty of racing as we got 6 seconds to complete 20 minutes of this race. 2 drivers currently out of the race as well. with the likes of Gamal being a later of a retirement, unfortunately an early retirement, first lap and second corner was Jan Bloknout, who unfortunately had his BMW scrapped.
Van der Vente had a crash. Sorry, Steven. Van der Vente had a crash. Tumbling down the timing sheet there. Now currently running in last. So either had a crash or a spin. Now he's still running, so might have had a bit of a spin at bus stop, but went from 15th to all the way to 17th now. So effectively running last. Just saw that on a timing tower there. Unfortunately, looks like the BMW not really working in his favor tonight.
Not gelling with the car, and remember, he hasn't had the best of seasons as well. Van Vente going and landing up way down the order. I think he's only finished possibly one race this season, not having the easiest of drives at this time. Yes, he's finished 2 races. He got 26th in round 1, 18th in round 2, as he did cross the threshold of completing 60% of the race, but 2 DNFs as well, going and throwing him down the order. So quite a few drivers needing to really figure out the pace underneath it. Rob van der Heever and Chris Collison, they catch up to Neil Greening and Arno Kraus, who are having a brilliant battle between one another. Mark Jacobs leads out the race with Brandon Kruger holding the fastest lap time of the race, 2:20.1 at this stage of the game. And drivers trying to figure out what is going to be the next plan here. Remember, fuel usage is a thing, and the drivers need to keep that well enough in mind with what they want to do. Is how are they going to elevate their game? How are they going to move forward? Where can they make up time during the course of this race that will further benefit them in the long run of it? So I do foresee that a couple of drivers are going to have a tough time out here. I do foresee a couple of drivers needing to really pull up the socks. But the difference from first and second to the rest of the pack is becoming more and more shown. As, I mean, Kleinart's 4.4 seconds off the back of Brandon Kruger, who is running in second place. The RTA team are well enough ahead and open up a bit of a gap. Kleinart's has opened up the gap to Gerrit Bucas, and then Paul Venter also sitting in a bit of no man's land away from Kirsten Peters. I do think that all 6 of those drivers are working on fuel. If you go back to Arno Kraus, Neil Greening, Rob van der Heever and Chris Collison, they're on a straightforward attack with one another to try and move up. But unfortunately, that is going and hammering their fuel usage as well. But I'm trying to also work out the points, because Martin is going to score 37 points if he remains where he is, which is going to cleanly get him past the likes of his teammate of Bloknout. But the question is, with Kruger sitting on 72 points, he'll score 31 points. Is that going to be a clear pass as well to get around Bloknout, who will stay on 121?
It's all to gamble for you, Stephen. And while I was busy talking a bunch of nonsense, I assuming the last time we saw the front of the pack, Brandon Kruger was in the front, and now it again swapped around that Jacobs was in the front. So somewhere, I don't know if it was a bit of a discussion within the team, or again Brandon Kruger has the car a bit set up towards wet weather running with maybe a bit of hybrid, and Martin Jacobs, because he came into got out on track so late and was able to put such a blistering lap time in. If he was like, you know, caution to the wind, I'm chucking on a dry setup, making this car as fast as possible in a wet setup or in a dry setup, and just gambling all, placing all my chickens into one basket, or all my eggs into one basket, chicken eggs maybe, and just going and say, I'm going to run it however it is. But we have a 4-way fight here currently, with Martin Jacobs absolutely already pulling a 1 second gap there. But Arno Kraus, he defended against the likes of Neil Greening, Rob van der Heever, and then also Chris Collison. Chris Collison tumbling down the order, now holding on to that final little top 10 spot after starting in 5th place, I believe, and now sitting in 10th position. So he lost quite a lot. That car definitely not set up for the shape, for long distance racing, but rather for the likes of qualifying pace. So this is something that is quite interesting about Kirsten Peters, that gap not going down in any shape or form. But if our timing tower is right, we do have a bit of a close battle, also another three-way battle in the back of the grid between the likes of Herman Percival, Brandon Holzhausen, and then Stanton Augustus, as we see on shot here. Herman Percival trying to take a look on the inside, saying no, rather backing out, using a bit of experience, saying, listen, I'm not going to send a long shot down the inside into Lacombe. Lacombe is a very tricky circuit. Yes, you have the inside for the first part, then second part you have outside, and then again inside. So it's going to be a bit of a mindful one as we take a look here. Going into the hairpin, and then past the inside goes the likes of Herman Percival, past Brandon Holzhausen, going into No Name. Herman Percival has one mission alone, forward and forward only, and he has enough time in hand for him to, mark my words, break into that top 5 if he keeps it clean, doesn't extend track limits, and perhaps even putting just continuing his pace and taking care of the stars. However, he does have to do a pit stop still, but that McLaren seeming to be absolutely hooked up in all the right places as he sets his sight now to go after the Lamborghini of Stanton Augustus of Stingers Racing, and then will shift his focus to the likes of Kirby Tron, which is 9-10 seconds up the road from him, from the likes of Augusta. So actually, no, not 10 seconds, probably 2 seconds up the road. We just send in the shots. So it's going to be a handful for many of the drivers, as I don't think many of them expected to have dry running throughout this entire race.
So I was doing a little bit of math while you're keeping an eye on the track. And yes, Stephen doing math is exciting. It's definitely lots of smoke and fire, and visited by the fire department 3 times over in the short space. But I do want to point out, as we do see Herman getting a little bit too close to Stanton Augustus there. You've got a poor drive, and they're going to go side by side. We'll carry on with that thought now, but it's going to be Herman around the outside in towards La Source. Can he make it work? Stanton Augustus try to hold the apex. Oh, contact again. Both drivers getting the hit. Brandon Holzhausen saying thank you very much. He clears past both cars, goes in for a block defense, and now needs to try and make his way through. The BMW driver just capitalize on the rest of the drivers running into a bit of a problem, pushing way too hard with one another and not having enough room. Brandon trying to guard the inside line. This is always a rough place to be in. He goes right back to the middle, leaving a bit of a gap between them, and backs out of it. Decided rather to pick his fighter somewhere else, but created that bubble, knew where the guys were, and said, all right, I now need to just position myself that if there's an opportunity that I can take it without running into a bit of a problem. However, it did not work out in having the drive, as Herman is more than happy to just keep his foot in it and run the long game. Now, I was working out the points and looking at it. Martin Jacobs take over the lead of the race, with Gerrit Bucas able to move up to second place in the championship if he can get into third. Now he needs to really dial up the work. He needs to get into third place. He'll be able to take over second in the championship, but that will leave Blithnote third in the championship. Kruger will be fourth, sitting on 103 points if he maintains second place. He'll earn a little bit more if he gets into first, but he will be sitting right behind Blithnote, and the two of them will have to go to war in round 6, 7, and we'll have to try and see where they move forward. I mean, if you look at how many rounds left in this championship, we got 8 rounds. That means that for Blithnote, round 6, round 7, round 8 are the only races that he can score against his own team. For Bucas, this is brilliant. Let them fight, let them brawl, let them chase each other down, and you've got the championship. However, Neil Greening dealing with Rob van der Heever from the Griffin Sim Racing team, and I do want to point out that Rob has been trying to really carry a lot of forward momentum for the Griffin Sim Racing team. Last week, landing up with the Griffin Sim Racing team in lead racing, in Pro and Pro-Am, out onto the podium in multiple different leagues. Now he's trying to do exactly the same, carry that momentum through for the team as the only LMU driver out on the field for the Griffin Sim Racing team as it stands. Arno Kraus the only team try-hard driver out on the circuit, deal with Neil Greening, who at the moment is having a rough time trying to find his way past. So I do think, one, the championship is going to be a nightmare to go and consider, and you got to really figure out what is the big game plan here. However, when it comes to a little bit at the back, it's going to be a bit of an interesting time. Neil Greening, as we know, is the owner of Flick Floyd, who is the title sponsor of Logistical Nightmare Racing. But with Flick Floyd going and ordering a bit of rain, I'm sure that's not quite what he wanted when he said, I'm looking for wet and wild.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think, but you know what, Steve? I am glad about one thing though. After a very lonely race, after a very lonely race at Qatar, I'm glad he found himself a partner, or not just one, but two partners to keep his front windscreen occupied as well as his rearview mirror. So he's not lonely out there tonight. But while we were going down,
the way that these three are fighting out, I'm dead sure that the teams and the drivers will be enjoying themselves, drying off after a wet race with a very good, enjoyable spit dry at the end of it.
Well, yes, and as we were busy talking about that, I'm keeping an eye on the gaps between Jacobs, Kruger, Kleinans, and Bierkes. Kruger is not able to respond. Kruger actually having a larger gap coming out and that gap actually getting quite larger. Brandon Kruger, what is going on here? It goes from 2.7 all the way to 3 to 4 and then drops down again. So Brandon Kruger not able to respond to the times of his teammates. However, Kleinans able to go closer as side by side. Rob van Heerden, a phenomenal run going through a Rouge, gets alongside the likes of Niels Greening. Neil Greening now having to switch from mirror watching to watching that big rear wing of the BMW M4 just sailing past and being left alone once again.
Here comes where the big one is. Rain on the windscreen. How long are you going to stay out on your tires? Because, folks, if you take a look to the screen, take a look. Everyone's on medium slicks. Medium compound slicks, which means they're not the softest. You're not going to get those amazing lap times out of them. They will have the longevity. However, when it comes to wet weather racing, they're an absolute nightmare to have. So the drivers are going to be going through some very greasy conditions. And the moment we start to see a spray, folks, that it means these cars have absolutely no grip. That is like going and walking onto an ice rink with your Nike tackies and trying to run across the ice rink and do laps, just running. It's not going to happen. You're going to see your face into the ice and land up with a bit of a problem. And now we will start to see the difference in drivers and their setup. Remember, we brought up Chris Collison, who set some good time in the wet. Well, it's swaying back into his favor. Now sitting in top 10, he's going to slowly but surely look at climbing the ranks. I think that's where Brandon Kruger has got the problem, because we know Brandon Kruger's natural setup on his cars from last season to now has always been a little bit loose, a little bit wild. He likes that rear rotation to come into play with him. He loves the car to pivot around him. But now you add a very big factor of drivers having to deal with wet weather racing. Having a car that's so skittish is going to be like a cat on a hot tin roof. It is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be a difficult mission, and that means that you're going to have to really take your foot off the gas. But that's playing into the hands of Rowan Kleinans, who is now slowly but surely getting that bite back into the field. However, Bierkes losing a bit of time with his Lamborghini, while Paul Fenter closing up at a rate of knots. The question comes in, the setups. You slapped on a dry setup that can get you going, or did you build something to handle both? The question comes in for this car. As he gives it everything he's got, what's going to happen when the spray kicks down? Because we've got to remember, he is the only driver that is on the grid at the moment that has not gone and done a lap in the wait here tonight. Everyone else got to qualify in it Martin came in the bone dry.
It's all, well, semi-dry, wasn't completely dry. I was still running at 2 minute 31, but it was enough to get him pole on a one lap hot lap. So it's all about equations, and it's all going to be to play for. We don't know what's going to happen. This is our closest fight on circuit currently between Kraus, Jeffer, and Greening, with Chris Carlson dropping down a bit more. And then also, but I do think the next shot will be our closest indicator of setups, might be the likes of, again, I'm going to talk about him a lot, Herman Percival. Flying up the field in the dry weather, is he able to keep that pace when it comes to the wet? Or has the likes of Lucas Hubert, yes, he's 26 seconds back, been able to pull a bit of a wool blanket over the eyes of the competitor? But we do not know that. And also how long this weather is going, well, the rain is going to be around there, and what the effect it's going to have on the circuit. In practice, we saw the drivers run wet weather at times, and we saw spray kicking up. But it's all about what is going to be happening here as the headlights shine brighter, as the skies are darkening and becoming gloomy. Drivers having to be careful at Blanchimont, running wide. They will give you a track cut, and it's not something that can be just lifted earlier on, as we do see drivers now taking a bit of a different line through bus stop in order to get the car rotated out there.
Peters into the pits, but Arno Kraus flirting with track limits, battling to slow the car down. We saw Neil Greening having that exact same problem. Cars not slowing down under braking, and the drivers having to really just tiptoe around, trying to do everything they can. But we have seen our first car pulling into the pits. That will be a pit stop for tires. Now, that's going to be Peters that's pulled into the pits. The only other driver that has gone into pit lane was a bit further back with Gumal, but Gumal is out of the race now, so he's of no concern. But Peters will be the telltale. Keep an eye on the driver. Yeah. If Peters puts on a bit of wet tires and starts to close up the distance, it will be a perfect indicator for any team to whether they need to get that car into the box, get them sorted out. Even if the driver says, I can pull it through, I can drive through this, it's where's your marker? How far is the marker climbing up through the field? And where will it go? Johan VDV pulls into the pits as well to get himself sorted out. And I do suspect that wet tires coming on there as well. So keep an eye. As a team captain, as a pit crew, as a driver, I would start to put my marker on Peters, see where the times are and how many seconds, not split seconds, how many seconds they're making up just by being on a fresh set of wet weather tires. And being in a brawl like this at the moment with Arno Kraus, Rob van der Heeven, Neil Greening are fighting out, Kobe Turan and the likes of Herman Percival, they are in the danger zone of when they do the pits, while Kirby throws himself way into the danger zone, into the dirt, and picking up a lot of rubble on the way out. But I do suspect that Paul is done.
Yeah, I think we will see him jumping into the pits quite shortly here, though. But Stephen, you spoke about the confidence of the drivers. Who is going to be... Who has that confidence when it comes to these type of conditions, as we do see the leaders into the pits, top 3, top 4, top 5, all into the pits. They decided to not be as confident as Lance Stroll and Lando Norris in Moscow in 2021 and decided to go to the pits. That triggers everyone to go into the pits to see what's going on here, as the rain is coming down hard. They decided to not be confident on the tires as Max would be normally on a set of wet weather, and Herman Percival going and shocking everyone into the pits. Kirby Tron staying out, showing confidence in his setup, as well as the tires, yet alone we saw him go off at a Piff Path and into the gravel trap. So now, is this brave? Is this a move that will not gonna pay off? As I said, we have a Lando Norris moment saying, I can stay out, and going off the circuit. Unfortunately, not the call to be made, but hey, he's in third position.
Do you remember the story of Icarus?
Two sec. I was going to see if he's going to make it through a Rouge, because this is going to be brave. Okay, he made it, lucky. But you can continue, Stephen, sorry.
Do you remember the story of Icarus? Fly too close to the sun and you will burn. Well, Kirby's going to have that, unfortunately, because now that the entire field have all pitted, it means that he's on the losing wicket. Everyone's undercut him. And every time he's dropping a wheel off circuit, he's getting looked at by the stewards. The stewards are going to be saying, hang on, you're using your track cuts here, and that's going to further amplify. I do think the race is going to be in a huge amount of pain, but I do want to point out this little car here. That was the first one to go into the pits and get wet tyres on, sits in 7th position.
And I think, Stephen, for the likes of Kirby Chon, I think Andy, the audio guy, is going to start playing a certain soundtrack in the tune of Thomas the Tank Engine as the cars are going to coming down on him. As we say that, Kirsten Peters, unfortunately, at Lacombe just goes in and messes it up already. But I'm curious to see Bierkes already. Look at the speed difference out of corner exit. Bierkes around the outside and says, thank you very much, into fifth path. I am going to take this position from you. You are looking like a standing chicane for me there due to the tire difference there. But Kirby not getting any reward from his gambles, trying to stay it out longer there. Now Force just tumbling down already in 4th. Here comes the likes of Rod Kleinans already being fouled up by the dry tire runner.
This is gonna change it as Kirby goes off.
This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt.
And unfortunately, Rowan Kleinans would be picking up a little bit of damage on his car after that little light touch. And Kleinans got caught up behind, losing time to Bierkes. And Kirby landing up, getting caught into the wall. Now going to have the cars coming through closer towards Blanchemont is going to be one to keep an eye out for, because Ron is needing to really lift and just try and limp the car around at the moment. But that pit stop goes from just putting a fresh set of tires on to now needing a bit of work on the body as well. I've got to say, the cable ties and duct tape are going to come out for the bodywork and possibly the ego.
So that will be suspension damage both front and rear on the right-hand side as the quarter panel. Well, the entire right-hand side looks like crumpled paper from the contact there. But take a look at that spray. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that many drivers are known or are quite aware of. We drive it on the highways, and we sometimes, especially if it's downpour, it is absolutely a white wall in front of you. Now, consider this is not extreme weather, but these drivers are going at 200, close to 300 kilometers an hour. That is an entire white wall, as we see a McLaren into the wall.
That's Devon now getting out of shape.
That's at least safe, but this is an entire white wall in front of you. You stop driving looking at the car in front of you to find your brake markers. You start racing by the likes of brake lights in front of you. Where is the driver in front of you braking? What's going to be working? What's not going to be working? Side by side in front, we have Rob van Heever and Neil Greening again going into Lacombe. Neil Greening going onto the inside, defending well. As you see, some puddles starting to form on the curbing there. Rob Viefer not able to keep it circulating there, as we do see some of the virtual grandstand slowpoke racing saying this looks fun. But yeah, and then also I know some people are curious as to how can they join us here at for the LMU side, and that's all. All the information can easily be found by going down into the description down below and joining onto our Discord there, where all the information can be found for any of our leagues running for LMU, ACC, and iRacing. So if you are curious and wanting to join us, do head on over down to the description and join us in the Discord, so you can join us here out on circuit there. And if you are curious as to where you can get some gear to race with us, head on over to EG Evolved Simulators. They have everything you need from Flight Sim to Racing Simulator, from Moser to Asset Tech to next level sim racing, and also Sim Magic. They will get you sorted out in 2 shakes of a dog's tail. You'll be able to race with us as soon as you can to your heart's content. But Battle of Circuit really stepping it out there at Stavelo. Rob van Heever unfortunately getting a bit twitchy there on exit there, and this Arno Kraus was in front, has dropped down. Now has Chris Collison keeping his mirrors full. Chris Collison hoping to showcase the power in that Lamborghini V10 Evo Huracan 2, or Evo 2 Huracan, as I do think he his setup is coming alive and is able to perform much, much better. But Herman Percival dropping down the order. What's 12th now and 14th?
Here we go.
Messing up
That's
his
setups coming
setup.
into play. And that is
unfortunately hoping for a full dry one, not going to be able to work out for him though, I believe.
Now, unfortunately not playing into his hand here. Chris Carlson keeping an eye on Arno Kraus and Rob Funihiva fighting out between one another. And as much as they're trying to fight, they're also trying to spot the brake markers, seeing where they can go, with Arno Kraus getting a massive, massive tank slapper in the Chevrolet. I actually had a chat to him about the car as he goes side by side. This is going to be brave for both drivers. Rob second guessing the option. Lift, lets him go, and rather comes through. But I had a chat to Arno Kraus. I said, listen, what do you need to do with the car? Because Chevrolet has always had this tendency to have a snap oversteer on it. He says, well, it has to drive the car with a lower TC, which is the traction control to keep it all together. However, the problem that comes in is it makes life a little bit tricky. So it all runs onto throttle control. But if you turn the TC up too high, this thing picks up so much understeer that you battle and battle and battle and end up scrubbing your tires way too hard. So even in the rain, and there is Jan VDV parked off on the one side and is unfortunately just parked again.
I wonder if that might be a bit of an electrical issue that needs to sort out there. This is something that we need to keep an eye out.
Did he reach
But
for a piece of
curious to
pizza
see.
again? Because the last time
well, if
he
he
hammered
did.
the wall because he had a piece of pizza. The previous time is when he tried sharing his camera with his team in pit lane. So he was trying to figure that one out. And now parked. I mean, that's a bit of a strange one. We also got Lucas Joubert pulling into the pits. So is this for a fuel stop that wasn't quite planned? Because he was one of the earlier drivers to go and have their run. So, I mean, this is always an interesting run for the drivers. It's always an interesting take for many of the drivers to think about what they need to do. However, I'm not quite sure for what it's going to do. But we are getting words that Jan VDV parked next to the track is communicating, but is yellow flags for the corner. So, yeah, bit of an interesting... I don't even know what to say on that one, other than...
Curious.
I would recommend if there's a problem,
Oh,
get it back to the
spinner.
pits. That is Neil
Niels
Greening.
Greening losing it. With unfortunately, he had a good gap over Arno Kraus. But getting too early onto the loud pedal and saying, whoop-de-doo, there goes a Lamborghini saying, I want to become a front-engine car. The Audi, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2 making a bit difficult.
You're not wrong. VW
Okay, so
Motor Group.
here's a little thing. So VW owns Audi, and also owns part of Lamborghini, I believe. Or Audi owns part of Lamborghini. It's a whole story. If you ever have the opportunity, look at a Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2 and look at some of the components in it. It's got Volkswagen, it's got Audi, it's got a whole bunch of badges in it, but it's unfortunately not a Lamborghini anymore, really, in purity. It's literally just Audi in long shape. One can only say that. But yeah, I mean, Stephen, just look at the spray out there. The drivers are absolutely struggling to get their cars rolling. Or not rolling, just circulating, keeping it all four wheels on between those white lines. It looks to be an absolute battle for these drivers. I mean, we only see the headlights in the spray as they come down the downhill section for the hairpin.
It's turning into a race and a half. We've got Jan van der Vente an out of the race. We did have him saying that he wasn't quite feeling all too great, and that's why he's gone and chosen to be out of the running and was parked next to the circuit. And unfortunately is our third car out of the race. Jan VDV, Jan Gimmal and Jan Bluchnout is going and fighting it out. Now, I do want to point out something interesting. Do you know that the Audi R8 comes in various different versions, if I may say. So we're going to try and get some nice camera shots there. But they come in different versions that play rather well. You got your V10 to work with, which is the same V10 that is built into the Lamborghini Huracan. And the Evo 2 was a slightly beefed up version of that, but also has better fuel economy all around. You can then get the V8 version of the R8, and you can get a V6 version. But did you know you can get a 4-cylinder version of the Audi R8? So it has the body, but it's literally a 4-cylinder motor that's more affordable for those. So you can get away with a lookalike to an Audi R8 with the engine that's in your Audi A4.
Ain't that
That's gaslighting.
what the
That's
Audi
gaslighting.
Yeah. Ain't that technically what the Audi TT also is? Because I mean, there was a time where Audi built these cars. Yes, they had the R8, which was the top tier racing car, GT3 spec. Excellent customer racing car, having won. Well, I don't think they've won. No, they've won the Spa-Francorchamps with the likes of WRT before WRT switched over to BMW. They were the last Audi custom racing team out there. But if you take a look of the Audi R8 and compare it to the likes of the Audi TT, which is a road-going car, which is very more known to people out there, which you've seen on the roads, and it's always involved in some sort of race on the highways, trying to be fast everywhere, even though the car isn't that fast. But they had the same body up until the Evo 2 came out, which is the Audi Evo 2 R8 Evo 2 that came out, and that car, unfortunately, they did the whole rework of the Audi R8 Evo, and then it didn't even last 2 years when they decided to call quits on the racing endeavors, and said they will support the customer teams, but unfortunately customer teams saying no, because that coincides with the time and window when Audi started pulling the plug on all of their endurance programs and started focusing on their F1 entries. So, correct me, Stephen, Audi TT, Audi R8, similar, just different engines.
An interesting one indeed, and if you're ever close to the Lamborghini, look at the bell housing. That will say Audi on it, but you can pay I think it's €1,000 to get a badge put on that covers the bell housing, but the steering wheel is still the Audi mold that they use. Now, fired up on circuit that we've been keeping a very close eye on is Arno Kraus in the Chevrolet against Chris Colson. These two have been the closest battle lines on circuit compared to everyone else. It's got a little bit more of an opening, but it does also show, we spoke about the balance of performance. Well, this is what happens when two drivers are used to their cars, and Arno Kraus a little bit too late on the brakes there, fouled himself up, allowing Chris Collison. But he was putting up a stellar defense regardless of it, because in the BOP listing, the Chevrolet has a poorer rate than the Lamborghini in terms of top 10 runs. However, you got to see Arno Kraus going and keeping that fight alive against Chris Colson, which in theory had the better car. He was able to stay in for the run, he was able to keep that solid defense, and it came down to the driver moving his way forward. Chris Colson made beautiful keep the pressure on until there was a moment to move forward. Now we've got another retirement, Devonell in the McLaren, unfortunately out of the race as well, going and having 4 cars out of the running. Another good fight happening. Brandon Holthaus and then Kubi Tarrant fighting it out. Now we saw Kubi go and run a little bit too far and seeing what they can do. But now it is side-by-side racing, and I do think Brandon has got his foot firmly in it. He wants to force Kubi in through the long way round, side by side, round the outside. Madman of note, Brandon. My hat, even Kirby thought, oh boy, this is going to end up in a smack. Just to have the BMW around the outside, beautifully done. Like cinema, just cinema from that shot.
didn't leave the circuit once, kept it, followed the line. Absolutely brilliant moves there from Brandon Holzhausen, which has thrown Kirby-John into the mix. And Herman Percival says, ooh, I see a porka, and I am craving porka for dinner. Let's see what's going to happen here. Has he gone there? But, Steven, check up to the top of the timing tower. Martin Jacobs, one qualifying lap in dry-ish conditions, greasy. One shot, top of the pole. Thank you very much, tip of the hat. I'm going to race now. Had a scrap with his teammate, Brandon Kruger. And now has almost a 12-second gap to Kruger. And Kruger has a 14-second gap to the likes of Bierkes. Now, Bierkes was able to get past the likes of Kleinans, which is now 15 seconds back. This is some mathematics, and I'm seeing you pulling out your calculator there. I think it's a calculator. I'm not 100% sure. I think you might, yeah, we got the calculator there, just scribbling around the notes there. What in the name of championship is going on here? Because welcome to wet weather racing. Welcome to tilting an entire championship onto its head.
It's turning into a bit of a wild one indeed, where the drivers are going that extra mile to see where they can go. But at the moment, Jacobs will be running clean with the championship. He will have quite a gap away from the likes of Blicknote. But Kruger, despite coming in second, will not be able to capture third place. Instead, Bierkes will be moving up into second to go and overthrow Blicknote down into third, which means that Bierkes led the championship at one stage. He fell down. Blicknote took over the champion. Was then Martin Jacobs that was leading the championship. Then Blicknote took over, and now it's swapped back round to Martin Jacobs to lead the championship. So we're starting to see some different running in this race. Drivers going that extra little bit. As Brandon Holzhausen trying to defend the inside line. This is going to be rough to try and get the drive out there in the wet. Not going to work out. And now that has fed him right back into Kirby, who is going to give it everything he's got. Now, Brandon, we've seen the cinema move down the inside. He's just not close enough to Herman this time round, but they are making a little bit of time to Stanton Augustus up the road. And I do think there's a bit of fuel saving starting to come in from these drivers, because the lap times are going down, 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 and no one able to move too far up the road. So we're getting to see a few breaks in this race and a few drivers starting to battle it out. Stanton Augustus being exactly that, has so far dropped nearly 2 seconds a lap in the normal wet weather driving, and now he is now in a very, very, very defensive situation there, as Herman went and nearly piled into the back of him. I think Stanton Augustus is just trying to get the car to the line. We did see last race where there was the likes of Bierkes, Chris Collison, all running low with fuel. I think Chris Collison actually ran out of fuel when he crossed the line, and that was the reason for a penalty that came in from the sim. And I do suspect the drivers are running exactly that. They burned through the fuel when they were in the dry. Now that it's in the wet, they're trying to fuel save, and lifting and coasting in the wet is so difficult because you're taking that pressure off the diff, and it will cause a lot more rear rotation coming out on you. Their lift-off oversteer is amplified, and which most of these drivers are enjoying in the dry.
Into Stavelo side by side. Kirby-John being brave on the brakes, trying to attack Brandon Holzhausen around the outside. Not really a corner where you want to do that. But I do say, Stephen, one driver that is not lifting and coasting is that little red McLaren. Flat out, Herman Percival pushing the car to its absolute limits, going after Stanton Augustus, getting passed around the outside of Blanchemont, now getting onto the asphalt, not very well, the AstroTurf, not very round to be, but keeps it on in line. So brilliant move there from Herman Percival. Seems to have been able to make the car work from in both dry and wet. So Herman Percival really putting in the work there, finding the grip on the circuit where our drivers are struggling to go. But now, will he be able to close a 33.5 second gap to that top 10? Remember, he had the pace to be in the top 4 during qualifying. Fortunately, getting dropped to the back of the pack for qualifying infringements, and now have his work cut out to him. But that has left these three drivers in the back fighting it. Oh, avoidance. Woohoo. Staying on the loud pedal is Brandon Holzhausen to avoid clipping the likes of Kirby Tron. Kirby Tron also being smart and just hitting the brakes a little bit in order to avoid contact. But that spin and being on throttle has thrown Holzhausen over the circuit to avoid getting contact. Now, we've seen wet weather racing you can go without having to stop. However, dry to wet forces drivers to stop. Did some drivers just avoid getting in the putting in petrol or fuel, or how is this going to go? That is the question that I do not know. Interesting to see, Stephen, and a lot of questions going into there, as I almost thought. Rob van Leeuwen going and sliding a bit there through the likes of Pujon.
Yeah, he's got Neil Greening chasing him down as well, and I'm noticing the cars getting a little bit more comfortable over the curbs. The drivers are trying everything they can. Now, for Brandon Holzhausen, he always took that corner a bit shallow, and that's what we landed up seeing. It upsets the car. There's a little bit of a bounce as the change of camber. It's got a little bit of a change of undulation, and unfortunately, as you go in there, everything lightens up. You stand on the power and you can over-rotate it. In the dry, it's a nightmare. In the wet, it's worse because you got all the water that pools down to the apex of that corner, and you land up catching it. So whenever you're racing, you've got to take what we call go-kart lines. In other words, you take a very wide line into a shallow and wide yet again. However, if you go and take a little bit too shallow, which is your normal racing line, you will land up going straight through the puddle. So you've really got to change your driving style and the way you attack corners and where you go. Also, don't race on the rubbered line. That's the worst case scenario. In racing in the rain, you don't want to be on the rubber line. Otherwise, you are going to be really slipping and sliding. You're going to have to go to an alternative line to get the drive out. And unfortunately for Rob van Leeuwen, having a little bit of a moment, the car not turning on him, nearly had Neil Greening getting a pass, and unfortunately Neil had to hit the brakes a little too hard before he lands up with a BMW on the nose of his car. Not quite what you want to have, but is starting to show the pressure. The Discal Nightmare Racing driver Neil Greening now fights up against the Griffin Sim Racing team driver of Rob van Leeuwen as they go side by side on across. Sees us in the mirror, and it is a drag race. Who's going to be first on the brakes though? And it looks like Neil Greening's going to try his luck, but can he make it through the corner without sinking it too far? He loses time. Rob gets right on the back of him, nearly gets the pass done, but just couldn't stand on the loud pedal early enough to get past that Lamborghini, but definitely is working on braking that little bit more. These two drivers are watching each other very, very carefully in all three mirrors.
No, absolutely, Stephen, and this has allowed the likes of Percival to close down a bit more, but Niels Greening going into Lacombe was on the was off of the race line, meaning not rubbered in, so he had a bit of had more bravery on the brakes because the car will not lock up, kicking ABS and all of that. But it did throw him off for the second part of that corner, which allowed the likes of Rob Heffer to close down on him. So it is kind of a interesting way of how the drivers are attacking. These two are following each other closely enough, finding out where each other's weakness is when it comes to the likes of around the width with the circuit. But again, also, you are racing according to the brake lights in front of you, especially with the spray, and sometimes out even the mirror, the side view window, as you try to find your brake markers. Your brake markers are not normally where they are on the dry circuit. You have to brake a bit earlier because track's wet. You're going to lock up and you will be heading straight towards the wall. Not what you want, especially when it's only about 16 minutes left within the race, and you are doing absolutely a great job there. Flirting with the track limits is Neil Greening, getting confident with Lamborghini, and probably going to get a slap on the wrist if he continues taking that line out there, but he has pulled a bit of a gap between himself and Rob Heffer. The Lamborghini waking up in these chilly temperatures out there on circuit, but on the brakes again, just Rob able to close down a bit more, but not enough. These two scrapping away is probably our closest fight on circuit. Yeah, looking at our timing tower, our closest fight is between the two of them.
So let's take a look at who is where. Mont Jacobs leads out the field with Brandon Kruger 13 seconds behind. Gerrit Bucas holds on to third place at the moment for the Stingers Racing. Ron Kleinans for the Delta Negative team holds on to fourth. Paul Fenter, Logistical Nightmare, into the top 5 to St. Peter's, down in 6th position with Chris Collison trying to close out the gap. Arno Kraus holds on to 8th position with Neil Greening now on the attack to try and close the distance. Rob van Heerver in the BMW holds on to the top 10. Herman Purcell up into 11th position ahead of Stanton Augustus and Brandon Holthuizen. Kobe Turan down in 14th has now just had the leader come on by, but rounding out the field is Lucas Joubert. And I got to give my hats off to the driver, despite being a bit off the pace of the rest of the field, has kept going no matter what and kept his foot in. And that's the one thing I've got to point out. It's a driver that in race 1 wasn't able to finish, but every single race after that has been consistently trying to move forward and consistently trying to see it through to the end. Despite the pace difference, it's still that forward thoughts of got to see it through to the end no matter what. If you see the green, you got to see the checkered approach coming into play, and that's where we got to see the drivers really come to their own, and especially for the championship, because every point matters when you're looking for the win. And when you are serious teams and serious drivers out there, you're looking for any advantage. But I'm looking at the track, Cam, and I'm seeing points where there's no spray. With 13 minutes to go, track evolution swaying back towards a dry side.
Yeah, you did get some spray in some of the corners that we just see now, Stephen. So it's some places they will not be. That will be on the long downhill straights as such, but they will be water pooling into the hairpin because that's the bottom of it. There's not much draining going on there, but of course on the exit will not be as much spray. Going into Speaker's Corner or No Name, there will be a spray again. However, you spoke about the likes of Lucas Joubert. Lucas, great driver. Spoke with him last week after the ACC race, because he's doing 2 championships also, but he's racing in our AM silver category, and he says he finds it a bit difficult to manage between the 2 sims because they're not able to put enough time on LMU, well, on this series, to really focus it. But he does go in with the mentality that he will give his all in an attempt to finish a race. If the car is running, he will get it across the line. So really a good mentality from that driver as well as his team that motivates him to say, we are new to this, we are trying our best, just get the experience, get the car across the line and give it your best shot no matter what. So really hats off to him and his team, really proving that I mean, you mentioned, Stephen, no matter what, as long as you cross the line, you get points, and that will help your championship hopes. Yes, you might not be fighting for the championship, but you will be fighting for the guy or the driver in front of you. That's your next challenge, and your next challenge, and your next challenge. And every single time that they are not here, it counts in your favor. So, really well done to the Joubert team and every one of our drivers out there that are still circulating and still fighting it. The weather conditions are absolutely atrocious. I can barely see outside of our commentary box window here. So really well done to them. And hats off to you guys. I know I've despised my time around Spa in wet weather conditions. I can only think how you must be feeling within that car. Absolutely a battle to keep it going around the circuit.
I know, it's definitely going to be a bit of a wild one, but the championship now starts to become a little bit more on the real side here. And we've got to touch on to that, because with 3 rounds left to make it or break it, at the moment, Gerrit Bucas is still in with a shot to go for a victory if Martin Jacobs lands up in a bit of a problem. Remember, Kruger lies down in 4th in the championship. He sits on 103 points. If Kruger, for whatever reason, can't score above Gerrit Bucas, and Bucas gets ahead of Jacobs and Bluchnote, it means he takes the championship. He's got that win. And at the moment, Jacobs and Bluchnote are crossing swords with one another. We got to see a little bit of that at round 2 at Paul Ricard, and it seems like it's carrying over with the team. So the RTA team going to really need to rein in the drivers slightly here to think about what's going on, or maybe, hey guys, there's 3 rounds left. Maybe off the start of the race, don't push too hard. Let's focus on trying to get that survival, that extra 2 laps. If it means that we lose a position on the start, so be it. We can pull ourselves back in. However, by going and landing up with problems of knockdowns through the field, I mean, Brandon Kruger let's take his case, where he landed up smack bang at the back of the field at Le Mans. That hurt him in the championship points. Any of those type of standings means that Gerrit Bucas will be able to break an RTA 1-2-3 in the championship. For the Stingers Racing, that is a big, big move for him to move forward, and also a big knock to a team that has so far every season been fighting at the top and looking to take the win every single time. Well, with 10 minutes to go, this is where the pressure comes in for the drivers to just keep it together. This is where you start going into automatic mode on your driving, where you're not wanting to push way too hard, otherwise you're going to land up with a bit of a problem. However, if you're close to your competitor, like Arno Kraus and Neil Greening, Paul Fenter and Peters at the moment, it is very difficult to shake that red mist and say, right, let's get into just keeping it together. Now you're starting to consider, I've got 9 minutes, it takes me 2 minutes 30 around the circuit in the wet. Now I've got to try and do that and score a position. Where are you going to make up that time? Where are you willing to take the risk? On tyres that's been used, a track that's got no grip, and drivers that are exhausted from concentration needed to keep through in these changing weather conditions. No longer just a fixed thing. It's now a evolution that is starting to take that toll.
Absolutely, Stephen. And what you spoke there about the season, or just the drivers in RTA having to be mindful. It takes me, well, it brings me back to words that were spoken many, many times before, but something that goes, that was said recently in the real world, but on the two-wheel side of racing in MotoGP, where Davide Tardossi and Marc Marquez, Tardossi being the principal of Ducati Lenovo MotoGP team, and then Marc Marquez, of course, the champion, saying, it's a long season. You can't just think a season ends after one race. It's a long season. So you have to think of the future plan. What's going to happen? What's the game plan going to be? Are you going to push both your drivers to, or all your drivers to go to the very end to race one another, or rather play the mindful game, go to the very, very end, and then if there is both, if all your drivers are in the fight until the very end, then make them race in the final race. Play mindful. Help each other, do what you can to get your team the championship, and then later on focus on the driver's side.
Can I chuck in another little factor here? Because I'm watching the lap times getting quicker and quicker out there, and well, just taking a look at these two. Last lap time, 0.9 of a second difference between them. They're getting faster. You've accelerated lots in the beginning. You've fueled up in the wait, based on what your fuel level was in the wait. When you're lifting, you're coasting, you're braking earlier, you're not standing on the throttle. Now you're into the last 7 minutes where you're picking up, and I kid you not, these drivers are going 1.5 to 2 seconds quicker a lap. That means the cars are using way more fuel than planned, and they are starting to get on the very, very close fringes of that fuel line coming on. And if you start running below in your virtual energy and in your regulated fuel, well, guess what? You land up with a penalty. You get thrown down. If your virtual fuel runs out, that's you out of the race. And now we're starting to see drivers going around realizing, hold on, I've got a problem here. For those that have a little bit more room to play with, they accelerate. For others, they're having to come off the gas and go and realize they're in for a bit of hard work out on the circuit, trying to figure out what's the big game plan here. Where are they going to gain time out on the circuit to make sure they can stay in for the fight? I mean, these are monumental factors right now, and everyone trying to figure out what can they do to stay ahead of the pack. And I've got a funny feeling there's a couple of drivers that are stressing, as we do see Neil Greening going out wide, flirting with those track limits.
It also comes down to tire life, Steve. I mean, all these drivers are on wet weather tires. Now, they are made for wet weather. That's what the name is, wet weather tires. They've got grooves to dispel the water off of the racing line in order to get the track into a better state. However, these tires are going to be absolutely screaming because they are now on a drier surface. They were out on surface when they got out of the pit box. They were coming out on tire blank. They were out of warm tire blanks. I only believe the GTPs are the only cars that are not allowed, according to specifications, to have tire warmers on. So these tires were on a higher temperature so they can activate faster and also on a higher pressure ratio. So what happens is higher pressure ratio compared to what's needed normally for a dry tire, your core temperature is going to spike, your carcass is going to get hotter, and then also the grooves are going, it's going to be turning from a wet weather to a dry tire shortly. However, it can lead to blowouts, punctures, or just completely and absolutely drop down in pace because you're going to get the warning saying your tires are overheating. As we take a look at these two fighting it out of Le Combe, who has preserved their tires the best and is going to be able to look after their tires as they go side by side almost into the hairpin.
I think at this point both are just trying to keep these cars alive, and you're hoping that it's like a Sky Electric car that's kept within the gap. But these two are absolutely... This is a fight for 9th and 8th position at the moment. Arno Kraus holds the inside line. That's where the water is. That's where he's cooling the tires down. And unfortunately, he's not able to get the drive ahead of Neil Greening. It goes around the outside, but Neil Greening's car is also not comfortable. It has been twitching underneath it. Paul Fenter's got the problem as well, with Peters now on the back. With 3 minutes to go, we may see a change for 5th and 6th, 8th and 9th at the moment. Chris Collison, a little bit no man's land, is just keeping an eye on the relative and seeing these two ahead of him and these two behind him, going and brawling it out for the remainder of it. And I've just suspect that every single one of them are sitting with the stewards waiting on the button saying, listen, we can throw a penalty out at you if you carry on flirting with these track limits. For Paul Fenter, top 5 is desperately needed, and I know his new pit boss is going to be going and shouting from top of her lungs saying, come on, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep it on the black stuff. For Peters, it's now put the pressure on, keep going, dial it in. Chris Collison has also made up a lot of room to these two that are brawling up ahead and is in a chance to get it for a top 5, which will score well in the points.
And absolutely, Stephen. I took a quick look over, well, not a quick look. One of our camera crews just took a quick look over to the data from Fenter's car. And I will say, those front tires are glowing absolutely green, but as soon as he puts pressure on them, they go yellow. So the sensor's working overtime. They're getting the data through to the team there. And that entire pit wall is just silent, just letting the man drive and giving the information that is needed. But Paul from his crew is telling me he is focused on his driving, not looking at positions, and just getting the car across the line. But I'm pretty sure in his head he's going, please let this race end, please let this race end, as we do go down into the final 2 minutes of the race, meaning it's 2 more laps to go unless the leaders decide to go and slack off right before. I mean, he's got a big enough gap. However, it all depends on what he wants to do. But it's a battle for both of these drivers. And in the background, we have a Lamborghini of Chris Collison sitting, waiting for his moment to release the Raging Bull if these two decide to tangle with one another.
Yeah, and this is going to be a very, very tense situation. This is, as a driver, you start asking, where is the leader? Where is the leader? I need the leader to come around me, because the longer you go out on these tires, the more risk you have. And you can see Paul Fenter and Peters attacking those curbs, really just riding them through at the moment as they snap around underneath them. Now Chris Collison has got into the mix. Every single one of these drivers are flirting with danger. You're going and pushing these Pirellis a little bit further than where they want to be, and now starting to have a little bit more of an impact of what you can get, and the risk of a puncture is getting bigger and bigger. Every time you attack those curbs and you're riding on the outside of it, the more it's getting eaten alive, and you are going to be having a tough time. And you can see the braking zones on the BMW. Paul Fenter just can't slow the car down fast enough and will have to just really dial it back as they've got one more lap to go after this and continuing their fight with no one left to go and deal with. And there's Martin Jacobs, 18 seconds ahead, now 17. He's gone and lifted off the gas and just letting the fight continue on.
Yeah, this is final lap for the likes of Martin Jacobs, Stephen. I've heard a little cue saying it might be if leaders on the final lap, 10 seconds. He just went through, the last time we saw Martin Jacobs, went through the likes of Blanchimont. Yeah, this is Blanchimont. He is going to be crossing the line for the final time. Stephen, he has led a brilliant race from a one-lap, hot lap qualifying time. Martin Jacobs has been trading places with his teammate. However, he stuck his head out and said, I am going to take this victory with one lap. I'm on pole, does a little bit of a burnout, crosses the line. Martin Jacobs takes victory at round 5 here at Spa.
Call him Houdini because he pulled a rabbit out of the hat for that one. Brandon Kruger will be slotting into second place and moving himself up in the championship. Bucas will be taking over second in the championship by finishing in third place and still holds on to a brilliant run for the end. Ruan Kleinans in fourth place, a stellar effort off the bat for him. Will be holding on to that fourth place. But Paul Venter, Peters and Collison continue on their fight, raging through to the end. Will Paul Venter be able to hold the onslaught from the Porker behind him? Will the Raging Bull of Chris Collison, who made up a lot of time in the wet and knows that he battles in the dry, has he got enough tire life to clear 2 cars? As we see Peters, big look on the inside. Paul tunes in. He's not going to be caught out. And this is where you fold in the mirrors, you close your eyes, and you run on muscle memory, because the last thing you want to do is look towards your competitors and where they are. You want to ensure you close every door possible. 3 into Blanchimont, and who's going to carry the momentum through as Collison runs wide, brings it back. Peters trying everything possible to go and close up the distance to Paul Venter, who's got the run underneath the Michelin Bridge. Peters trying to close up under the brakes and contact in the back from Chris Collison. Brought Peters a little bit closer. Peters holds the apex, literally slows it down, gets a tank slapper before the line, and it's Chris Collison to lift, allow it to happen, saying, well done, you held a solid defense. And it was Paul Venter, Peters, Chris Collison that come on by. Neil Greening will then take over 8th place with Arno Kraus behind him in 9th. Rob Funnyhever will take over the top 10 in his BMW. Herman Percival will finish up in 11th position after a stellar race. Unfortunately, a couple of DNFs coming in from Johan van Venter, Johan Kimmel, Johan Blichnout coming, and unfortunately being the first retirement in the second corner. I mean, that is definitely a nightmare case for him. And for the championship, it's all turned onto its head, Cam. This has now turned life into a very interesting situation for our drivers.
Absolutely, Stephen, and a phenomenal drive again from this McLaren, all the way at the back to 11th, just short of a top 10, but still, well done, well held, and still fighting out there. So well done to all of our drivers out there, Stephen, and oh boy, welcome to wet weather racing. It is unscripted, pure adrenaline, pure entertainment. We saw drivers battling it out, saw them tumbling down the field. We saw them just give it their all when the track started drying out, but unfortunately, heartbreak for some, glee for many others, with just some great pace being shown there from drivers putting in a flying lap in the dying moments of qualifying to snatch pole and keep it until the very end. I mean, what other word is there to describe it?
Moment.
Just amazing.
That's Houdini. That is a Houdini moment, pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
It's just absolute brilliant racing, Stephen. There's no other way to describe it.
I did not expect that. I honestly did not expect that. But also how the championship has now completely evolved as well. Many drivers now trying to figure out what can they do to move forward. I mean, this is what a race right the way through. And from all the teams playing their cards here, from Logistical Nightmare Racing, Griffin Sim Racing, from Stingers, everyone just doing their absolute best and really showing off what they can do despite the circumstances not working out in their favor. Drivers feeling that there is a little too much out there and running into problems of, hang on, we're not able to really extract the best out of these cars. Now, where are we going to capitalize on it as well? I do want to try and see if we can possibly get the replay up and going and see what happened on the start of the race with the likes of Blicknote, because that is one driver I really, really want to see what on earth happened to land up into the wall and taken clean out of the race from the start. I mean, that is a big, big impact for the driver, and we'll try and get that up on the screen as soon as we can. But Cam,
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
this is great stuff.
yeah, absolutely. It's edge of season entertainment here, and while the production crew is just trying to get that little the replay up and running, just to get some information about that, I do see we have a bit of a guest here, someone who is turning apparently quite old, and it's a
4,000 years
Mr.
old in April.
4,000, a Mr. Paul Fainter. Paul, wow, you were fighting for your dear life at the very end. I mean, our camera crew couldn't keep the camera off of you. You yourself, Kirsten Peters, and then also Mr. Chris Collison. Tell us what's going on. What went on during that race? I mean, the final minutes. From what I see on your pit crew told me was just silence and just letting you drive.
Yeah, no, look, geez, boys, dry setup, wet raced. That's definitely not the recipe to follow. I don't know. Eventually, I think I had no more. The car was saying there was tires. It did not feel like there was tires left on the car, and it was just slow and slippery. And I was just praying for more of a dry line, because I saw the drier the line got, the more grip I would find. So, man, I don't really think I probably deserved that P5, but I'll take it and I'll crack a beer and celebrate that in style.
Well, whether you deserve it or not, you drove a textbook race. Absolutely brilliant driving. And yeah, I mean, from the data that I saw from your team, I just saw your tires were absolutely screaming every time you went through the corners in those final stages. Yeah, it must have been quite a scary ride going through Blanchimont and saying, every time it's Stuart saying, hey, you're going a bit too far across that line, watch it. And then you're running out of, track extensions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I once or twice probably abused those a bit more than I should. And I know once I got like a orange track limit, and I'm like, oh crap, now I got to like hit the brakes properly or it's a drive through. So yeah, no, geez, I mean, that was good fun. Zero practice, arrived and was like, okay, it's a dry race into wet. Yeah, cool, let's just throw on some dries and let's go race. And it was, I knew we were in trouble when we qualified, and we qualified like 3 seconds off pole position. So yeah, that definitely, that was not, we knew we were in trouble, but dry race, that was fun. And man, you know what? We've just got to figure out how this wet works in LMU, and then we'll have fun with that too. But yeah, that was a fun race. So yeah, thanks to you boys for streaming it. I'll definitely crack my beer and go and watch the last 10 minutes and watch myself sweat there on track.
Well, yeah, we just saw on the replay the incident happening at Eau Rouge on lap 1 there, and wow, all I can say is we can be quite lucky to have Jan Blicknote walk away from that, but it was quite a hard hit. Take it from your perspective. How does it feel? Most of us know how it feels to go through Eau Rouge and then hearing suddenly, oh, a yellow flag ahead. You questioning is, do I go continue flat out or do I slow down? But it's opening lap. You have a bunch of cars behind you. What went through your mind for that?
I kept it flat and just look for the smoke and hope for the best. That literally was was my plan. If I was arriving at the top of the hill and there was 10 cars across the track, we would have been 11 or 12 extra cars across the track. That literally was my sentiments for that one. But yeah, thank goodness I saw it was a car to the left, and I just went, okay, cool, let's just keep going, and hopefully he stays where he is. So yeah, it sucks to see Blichnout get taken out. I assume that's going to be some fun discussions on that team. That's oops. But yeah, it happens, and it happens to the best of us, especially on the opening lap like that. And I mean, I've done that myself. I've taken my own teammates out exactly like that as well. So yeah, it's definitely not going to be a fun week in the RTA camp for the next 7 days.
Yeah, well, it's you were either lifting to see another day or hitting a movable wall and living up to your nickname. But however, I'm seeing my co-commentator jumping up and down like a giddy little boy, and with a sly little smile, and I think he wants to say something to you. So, Stephen?
I do want to ask, Paul, you got to hear your team having a bit of a fight out there, and I know that you've been getting a lot of coaching from Zaya Essa. Then you've also chatting to Christoph Peterson, who's going to be racing tomorrow night, like how to get that a little bit quicker in the cars. But also with your new pit boss coming in and giving a bit of a shout in the air as well. How's it been from motivation from your side, from the team, from the drivers in your team that don't seem to be on the same grid as yourself with Neil Greening and the likes of Brandon Holthuizen, but also the new pit boss that's going and shouting from the sidewalk to make sure that you stand for a top 10 fight?
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, Stephen. It's hectic to now get told you got to go racing, be quick, and don't hit walls and don't do stupid stuff. It's always I always try and make Essa proud. That's always my number one fan that I got to try and make proud by not hitting walls and doing well. But yeah, it's good when I'm able to be able to tell the team, I've kept it out the wall and we've actually got a great result. So yeah, it's fun, and I know that Vietia, he's going to focus a bit on a bit more of he's racing the top split guys in LMU, which is quite something new and nice for him. And then Stratum, he just didn't do this week and last week because he's been away for business. I think he's in Cape Town tonight, flying back to Joburg tomorrow. So he'll be back on the grid next week, and then we'll have to try and catch him again. So yeah, looking forward to it. At least I think, hopefully I've got it right this time. Are we at Fuji next week?
We're at
That
Fuji.
is correct.
We're at
Okay.
Fuji, but hopefully we're going to see the rest of your team come in and join you in the world of LMU.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe we'll at least be the four of us. So Brandon, Neil, myself, and Stratum will be there. Vietia, I don't know. He might, because he's doing some fancy championship on a Wednesday against Boothby or those guys. But yeah, we'll see about the other boys. Who we can kick out of the slumber and get them to take on LMU. Otherwise, well, you've got the four of us, and that's as much entertainment as RaceFace needs as just one wall around the track. So. And Fuji's favorite. I like that track. So I shall try and bring the pain for the RTA boys next week.
Absolutely.
Well, all hopefully within the rules there, though, if you bring the pain and become a movable wall. But yeah, Paul, I'm going to, I believe, Steve, anything from your side that you want to ask Mr. Paul here? Well, I will say this, Mr. Paul, I'm going to let you go. Go celebrate with your team, and I hope to see you all down there in the land of the rising sun, in the shadow of the beautiful Mount Fuji. Go celebrate with the team on a well-deserved fifth place. Well done to Paul Fainter from the LNR Logistical Nightmare Racing team.
Awesome. Thanks, boys. See you next week.
Well, Steve, we saw the replay, we saw the action, we saw the drama unfold with the championship tilting upside down. What can we take away from this?
Well, expect the unexpected. That is for certain. We've seen drivers get themselves to the top. We've seen all going wrong. Take a look at the earlier incident. It was a wheel dropped off to the inside on the grass into turn one. So a little too much of turn in through the likes of Blicknight into the wall. So no fault to his teammate which is after a little bit of rubbing as racing, it was turning in too early that landed up at the championship. But now the pressure goes to the likes of Martin Jacobs, who now leads the championship, will have the target flat on his back. For Bucas, he's happy for this because now moving up through the order. For Blithno, the pressure's on to carry on moving forward. For Brandon Kruger, top 3 is within reach. It's all about scoring the points. It's all about moving forward in the championship, where you're going to come out by the end of it. And with 3 rounds to go, anything can happen, Cam. Anything can happen. But with that being said, folks, it's been an absolute pleasure having all our drivers out on the circuit, going and putting on a great performance. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here in Belgium, here at Spa-Francorchamps, to go and see round 5 of our LMU Championship, powered by EG Evolved, going and taking us across the line before we jet over to the likes of Fuji, as you heard, Land of the Rising Sun. And Cameron, I know that you're going to be having a bit of fun jumping on economy flights. I'm going to be aiming to jump on a flight, well, do a little bit of flying, courtesy of EG Evolved, over to Fuji. So you enjoy the economy seats. I will eventually get there.
Well, you think I'm going economy? I am doing private jets, flying by my own, due to courtesy, as Steve's mentioned, by EG Evolved. However, before we head over to a little Japanese island there in the mountain shadow of Mount Fuji, we will first be heading to a little country known for its fashion, its pasta, its fettuccine and spaghetti, but also cast with the likes of Lamborghini and Ferrari. However, we are going to the beautiful country of Italy, specifically to Misano, the beautiful circuit, mostly known in its early life stages for a circuit for motorcycle racing, named after a motorcycle rider, Marco Simoncelli, who unfortunately lost his life during a race at, I believe, Malaysia. Not 100% completely sure. However, we are going to be heading there for our ACC Championship tomorrow, where the Pro-Ams and Pros will be fighting it out in a highly contested battle, and will be streamed here at RaceFace.Pro, but also for our very close championship battle happening on our AM Gold and Silver. Drivers in all classes fighting it out for that championship. It's action-packed rivalries going on for our next round for our GT3 Championship in ACC, proudly brought to you by EG Evolved. But from my side, I want to say thank you to everyone out there in the virtual grandstand for joining us tonight, for allowing us into your living room and keeping us company during this race here in Belgium, as we all hop onto our jets and head on over to Italy. From myself, Stephen Koenig, and the entire TSC production, I wish to say thank you to everyone out there. Have a lovely evening, and I wish to see you all next week and also tomorrow for our GT3 Championship. Have a good evening, everybody, and